volumes with cracked spines and dog-eared pages. The spare bedroom was quickly transformed into a cozy space for Lily, with Emily somehow producing a child-sized bed with pink sheets and a canopy that made Lily gasp with delight when she saw it. The arrangement that was meant to last a few weeks stretched into months. Thomas repeatedly offered to move back to their apartment, but Emily would wave away his suggestions with practical arguments about the convenience of the current setup. And truthfully, he couldn't deny that life had become considerably easier. Mornings were no longer a frantic race against the clock, with Emily often taking Lily to school while Thomas headed to the office early. Evenings found them sharing meals, sometimes takeout, sometimes surprisingly good home-cooked dishes that Emily prepared with unexpected skill. Most surprising was how naturally Emily slipped into their lives. She never tried to replace Claire. She was careful to ask about Lily's mother, encouraging Thomas to share stories about her. But she brought her own presence into their small family unit with a gentle persistence that neither of them could resist. For Lily, Emily became a confidant. The girl would perch on a stool in the kitchen while Emily cooked, sharing the complex social dynamics of kindergarten with solemn seriousness. Emily listened with the same attention she gave to client concerns, offering thoughtful advice about friendship troubles and teacher expectations. For Thomas, Emily became something he hadn't realized he desperately needed, a partner. Not romantically, though he couldn't deny the occasional awareness of her as a woman rather than just his boss. But she was someone who shared the burden of decision-making, who remembered dental appointments and school events, who noticed when he was reaching his breaking point and quietly stepped in to give him space to breathe. One evening, nearly a year after they'd moved in, Thomas returned from a particularly stressful client meeting to find the apartment quiet. Following the sound of soft voices, he paused outside Lily's bedroom door, which was slightly ajar. Inside, Emily sat on the edge of the bed, reading a story to Lily, who was already tucked under her covers. "But what happened to the princess's mommy?" Lily asked, interrupting the story. Thomas tensed, ready to step in. Questions about mothers always twisted his heart with the fear that he wasn't enough, that Lily was missing too much without Claire. "Well," Emily said thoughtfully, closing the book. "The story doesn't say. But I think sometimes princesses, and other little girls too, might have different kinds of families. Some have mommies who live with them, some have mommies who live in heaven and watch over them, and some have other special people who love them very much." Lily considered this. "Like me. My mommy lives in heaven." "Yes," Emily said softly. "And she loves you very, very much. Daddy says she's always watching me and that she's proud of me." "I'm sure that's true." Lily was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Emily, is it okay if I pretend sometimes that you're my mommy too? Not instead of my real mommy, but just for here?" Thomas watched as Emily's face registered shock, then something deeper, more vulnerable than he'd ever seen on her confident features. "Lily, that's a very special thing to ask." Emily's voice wavered slightly. "Are you sure that's what you want?" Lily nodded solemnly. "When Daddy's not here and you take care of me, it feels like what Katie says about her mommy. She helps me with my hair and makes me soup when I'm sick and knows how to fix Mr. Hoppy when his ear gets loose. That's mommy stuff, right?" Emily blinked rapidly, and Thomas realized with astonishment that she was fighting tears. "Yes," she whispered. "I suppose it is mommy stuff. So can I? Just sometimes, when it's just us." Emily gently brushed Lily's hair back from her forehead. "If that's what you want, then yes. But only if your daddy says it's okay too." Thomas chose that moment to push the door open. Both Emily and Lily turned to look at him, startled. "Daddy!" Lily exclaimed. "Did you hear? I asked Emily if I could pretend she's my mommy sometimes. Just for pretend, not for real." Thomas moved to sit on the other side of the bed, his heart full of conflicting emotions. "I heard, sweetheart." He looked at Emily over Lily's head, seeing uncertainty in her eyes. "And I think that would be just fine, if that's what you both want." The relief on Emily's face was palpable. "It won't change anything about your real mommy," she assured Lily. "She'll always be your mommy, no matter what." "I know," Lily said with the simple certainty of childhood. "But I think she wouldn't mind sharing. Daddy says sharing is important." Thomas felt a lump form in his throat. "That's right. And I think your mommy would be very happy to know you have someone else who loves you so much." The moment passed, and Emily finished reading the story. After Lily fell asleep, they retreated to the living room, where an awkward silence fell between them. "Thomas, I hope you know I would never try to replace Claire," Emily finally said, her hands wrapped tightly around a mug of tea. "What?" Lily asked. "I was completely surprised." Thomas shook his head. "I know that. And honestly, seeing how you are with her, I couldn't ask for a better influence in her life." He hesitated. "Emily, why did you really ask us to move in?" "The truth." She looked away, her profile silhouetted against the city lights visible through the large windows. "Would you believe me if I said I don't entirely know myself?" She sighed. "Part of it was exactly what I told you, practical concerns. But maybe I was also lonely. This apartment has always been too big, too quiet. And Lily, she brings something into a room that I didn't know was missing until it was there." "And what about me?" Thomas asked quietly. "Where do I fit in this equation?" Emily turned to look at him, vulnerability and strength balanced in her gaze. "You're the package deal," she said with a small smile. "Can't have Lily without you." "Is that the only reason?" The question hung between them, charged with unspoken possibilities. Emily set down her mug. "No," she admitted. "That's not the only reason." What followed was a conversation that lasted deep into the night, about grief and healing, about unexpected second chances, about the family they had somehow formed without intending to. They agreed to move slowly, to be mindful of Lily's needs above all else. But they also acknowledged that something had changed between them, something neither had been looking for but both now welcomed. 3 months later, the situation that had begun as a temporary arrangement became official when Thomas and Lily moved their remaining belongings into Emily's apartment permanently. Emily and Thomas were still navigating the complexities of their evolving relationship, boss and employee, friends, and now something more, but they were doing it together. Which brings us to the moment that changed everything. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon at the office. Thomas had stepped out for a client lunch, leaving Lily with the new office assistant who had become her occasional babysitter. Emily was in her office with the door closed, on a conference call with international clients. When the call ran long, she missed lunch and emerged from her office, hungry and distracted, only to find Lily sitting alone in the break room, carefully coloring a picture. "Lily? Where's Jessica?" Emily asked, referring to the assistant who was supposed to be watching her. Lily looked up. She got a phone call and said it was an emergency. She said she'd be right back, but that was a long time ago. The girl didn't seem upset, just matter of fact. "I'm drawing you a picture." Emily frowned, making a mental note to have a serious conversation with Jessica about responsibility. "Are you hungry?" "I missed lunch too." Lily nodded enthusiastically. Emily made them both sandwiches, and they ate together at the break room table. Halfway through her meal, Lily looked up at Emily with a thoughtful expression. "Mommy, do you think Daddy will like my picture? I drew our family, you and me and Daddy and even Mr. Hoppy." Emily froze, the sandwich halfway to her mouth. It was the first time Lily had called her Mommy outside of their private pretend games at home. The word hung in the air between them, simple but profound. At that exact moment, Jessica rushed into the break room, looking flustered. "Ms. Brooks. I'm so sorry, my sister had an accident and I had to arrange for someone to pick up her kids from school. I shouldn't have left Lily alone, but it was only supposed to be for a minute." Emily cut her off with a raised hand. We'll discuss this later, Jessica. For now, please take Lily back to my office. Have you ever witnessed a moment so raw and honest that it changes everything? That's exactly what happened when Emily Brooks, a successful marketing executive, discovered her employee's young daughter calling her mommy. The answer that followed would forever alter the course of 3 lives. Stay with me until the end to discover how one simple question led to an extraordinary journey of healing and love. If this story touches your heart, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more emotional real-life stories. The morning air was crisp as Thomas Carter hurried his 5-year-old daughter, Lily, through the entrance of Carter and Brooks Marketing Agency. He was running late, again. The babysitter had called in sick at the last minute, and as a single father with no nearby family, Thomas had no choice but to bring Lily to work with him. This wasn't the first time, but today was particularly important. His team was presenting a major campaign to a potential client, and his boss, Emily Brooks, had made it clear how crucial this meeting was. "Daddy, are we going to see Ms. Emily today?" Lily asked, her small hand clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit as they rode the elevator to the 14th floor. Thomas nodded, straightening his tie with his free hand. "Yes, sweetheart, but remember what we talked about? Ms. Emily is very busy today, so you'll need to be extra quiet and good while Daddy works." Lily's face lit up despite the warning. "I promise to be the quietest ever," she whispered dramatically, holding her finger to her lips. Thomas couldn't help but smile. At 32, he'd never imagined this would be his life, racing through office buildings with a kindergartner in tow, struggling to balance client meetings with school pickups, living on coffee and whatever quick meals he could manage to prepare. When his wife, Claire, died from complications during childbirth 5 years ago, his world had shattered. He'd been left with a newborn daughter and a grief so profound he sometimes couldn't breathe. The elevator doors opened to reveal the sleek, modern offices of the agency. Thomas had been working here for 3 years now, hired by Emily Brooks herself. At 35, Emily was already a force in the marketing world, having built her agency from scratch after leaving a prestigious firm in New York. She was brilliant, driven, and intimidating, at least that's what most of the staff thought. Thomas had always seen something more beneath her polished exterior. "Thomas." Emily's voice cut through his thoughts as she strode toward them, her heels clicking rhythmically on the marble floor. "The meeting's in 20 minutes, and," she stopped abruptly when she noticed Lily. "Oh. I'm so sorry," Thomas began, his words tumbling out. "The babysitter canceled, and I couldn't find anyone else on such short notice. I brought all her coloring books and her tablet. She'll be quiet in my office, I promise." Emily's expression softened slightly as she looked down at Lily. "Hello there." "Hi, Ms. Emily." Lily chirped, suddenly shy but smiling broadly. "I brought Mr. Hoppy to work today." She held up the well-worn stuffed rabbit. Something in Emily's face changed, a brief flicker of emotion that Thomas couldn't quite place. "Well, Mr. Hoppy is certainly welcome here," she said, her voice gentler than Thomas had ever heard it. Then, straightening, she turned back to him. "The Johnson files are on your desk. Review them before the meeting. And Thomas? Don't worry about Lily. She can sit in my office during the presentation. It has a better view, and she might enjoy watching the boats on the river." Before Thomas could thank her, Emily was already walking away, barking orders at another employee about the presentation materials. He stood there, momentarily stunned by her unexpected kindness. "Daddy, I like Ms. Emily," Lily whispered loudly as they made their way to his office. "She's pretty like the princesses in my books." Thomas smiled. "She's also very smart and works very hard." "Like you, Daddy?" "Much harder than me," he admitted, settling Lily at the small table in the corner of his office where she could color. As he immersed himself in the Johnson files, Thomas couldn't help thinking about Emily's reaction to Lily. In the 3 years he'd worked for her, he'd never seen her interact with children. Emily Brooks was famous for her dedication to her career. Rumors around the office suggested she worked 16-hour days and rarely took vacations. Some employees whispered that she was cold, calculating, married to her job. But Thomas had always sensed there was more to her story. The morning flew by in a flurry of preparations. True to her word, Emily came by before the meeting to take Lily to her office. Thomas watched as his boss awkwardly offered his daughter a hand, only for Lily to slip her tiny fingers into Emily's with complete trust. Something about seeing them walk away together, his fierce, intimidating boss and his small, trusting daughter, made his chest tighten with an unfamiliar emotion. The presentation went brilliantly. The client loved their campaign ideas and agreed to sign on immediately. When Thomas returned to Emily's office to collect Lily, he paused at the door, struck by the scene before him. Emily was sitting on the floor, designer suit and all, while Lily explained the intricate backstory of her stuffed rabbit. Emily was listening with rapt attention, as if Lily's 5-year-old imagination was sharing market insights. And then Mr. Hoppy had to save the entire forest from the dragon, but he wasn't scared because he's the bravest rabbit ever, Lily was saying seriously. That's very impressive, Emily replied, equally serious. Bravery is an important quality. Daddy says it's okay to be scared sometimes too, Lily added, looking up and spotting Thomas in the doorway. Daddy! Did you win the meeting? Thomas laughed, stepping into the office. We did, thanks to Ms. Emily and the team. Emily stood quickly, smoothing her skirt as if embarrassed to be caught engaging in make-believe. Lily was just telling me about Mr. Hoppy's adventures, she said, an unusual hint of color in her cheeks. She's quite the storyteller. Takes after her mother, Thomas said without thinking, then felt the familiar pang that always accompanied mentions of Claire. A shadow passed over Emily's face. She's a wonderful child, Thomas. You should be proud. Thank you for watching her. I hope she wasn't too much trouble. Emily shook her head. No trouble at all. She hesitated, then added, she's welcome here anytime, if you're ever in a bind again with childcare. That unexpected offer marked the beginning of a subtle shift in Thomas and Emily's professional relationship. Over the next few months, whenever Thomas found himself without childcare, Emily would insist that bringing Lily to the office was no problem. The intimidating boss who had once terrified new employees gradually revealed a different side of herself, at least around Lily. Thomas began to notice small changes in the office. A drawer in Emily's desk now contained children's books and small toys. The break room suddenly stocked chocolate milk and animal crackers. And most surprisingly, Emily began leaving the office at reasonable hours on days when Lily was there, often taking time to chat with the child about her day at kindergarten. For Lily, these visits became the highlight of her week. She would talk endlessly about Ms. Emily at home, recounting every interaction in vivid detail. Thomas found himself increasingly curious about the woman behind the powerful executive facade, the woman who would set aside million-dollar campaign plans to seriously discuss the merits of unicorns versus dragons with a 5-year-old. 6 months after that first impromptu visit, tragedy struck the Carter household again. Thomas's elderly mother, who had been the only family support he had left, passed away suddenly. Though she had lived in another state and couldn't help with daily childcare, she had been his emergency backup and the one person who connected Lily to her past. The loss hit Thomas hard, reopening the barely healed wounds of Claire's death. When he called Emily to request a few days off for the funeral, her response surprised him. Take as much time as you need, Thomas. And please, let me know if there's anything at all, that I can do to help. The genuine concern in her voice nearly broke him. Thank you, he managed, his voice rough with emotion. We'll be okay. But when he returned to work a week later, hollow-eyed and exhausted from trying to explain death to a 5-year-old while processing his own grief, Emily called him into her office at the end of the day. You're not okay, she stated simply, closing the door behind him. Thomas opened his mouth to protest, then closed it. He was too tired to maintain the facade. No, he admitted. I'm not. Emily gestured for him to sit. Thomas, I'm going to make you an offer, and I want you to listen before you